Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Scott here, and today we're going to talk about how each team on LeBron's free agency list would add him. The free agency decision for LeBron James comes down to multiple factors. For these 4 teams on LeBron James' list, they all have a legitimate shot at signing him depending on how the playoffs go. For the Rockets, they may only be able to add him if they can't get past Golden State. Otherwise, LeBron would be committing a move that would be even weaker than Kevin Durant's move to Golden State in 2016. For the Lakers, they may only have a chance to sign LeBron if Paul George joins with him. If the Thunder can't get past the second round, it will improve the Lakers' chances to sign George, which helps their LeBron James pursuit as well. Then for the Sixers, it'll also depend on how well they do in the playoffs. If they can make it past the first round and compete well in the second round, they may have a good shot at adding LeBron. But the overall expectation for where LeBron James goes comes down to how well the Cavaliers do. If they can win the championship, then I highly doubt he'd leave. But if they lose early in the playoffs, it seems very likely he'd leave. These are all factors that will have to be played out, and we'll have a good idea of what his options are once the playoffs are over. While these factors will ultimately determine where LeBron ends up, it still leads me to believe that all 4 teams on LeBron's list will have very good chances to sign him, which is why we're going to look at how LeBron would be added to each of these teams. The Rockets have a completely different dynamic than these other 3 teams, and by far the most complicated. They may have to give a pitch to LeBron immediately after the finals. There are 2 ways the Rockets can add LeBron. One way is to give him a 4-year max deal in free agency and find trade partners to make cap space, or LeBron opts into his player option and gets traded to the Rockets before free agency, and he waives his no trade clause on the deal. For the trade to the Rockets to work, LeBron will need to opt into his player option for the 2018-19 season before free agency even starts. Then the Rockets will have to come up with a trade package that matches up contract values, as well as give the Cavaliers enough assets where they're fine with setting up a Rockets super team. The Rockets could offer the Cavs Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon, 2 cap fillers, and their 2019 and 2020 first round picks for LeBron James. This trade is similar to how Chris Paul was able to get to the Rockets last summer. They added a couple quality pieces and draft picks as well as cap fillers to match up Chris Paul's $24 million player option. For this deal, the Rockets would have to send Ryan Anderson and Eric Gordon, who are 2 starting caliber players, along with cap fillers and draft assets in return for LeBron James. The reason why this trade could work is if LeBron does decide he wants to leave Cleveland, this gives the Cavs a chance to get value out of him. The Cavs would still have a pretty competitive team that includes their lottery pick. When the Cavs lost LeBron in 2010, they went from 1st in the conference all the way down to 15th. This would not be the case if they're able to add players in a trade, which means if you're the Cavs and LeBron wants to leave, you probably want him to join the Rockets. For this trade to really come to fruition, it would require LeBron to have his decision ready before July 1st. In the past, he's announced his free agency decision 10 days after it opened. He has also waited an entire month to sign a contract extension in 2016 to confirm the Cavs would add talent around him. He would have to know exactly what he wants to do without even sitting down with the Lakers, Sixers, and Cavs over free agency. While there's no precedent for LeBron to make an early decision in his free agency, this specific situation may make him want to do it. The Rockets are set up to have the best chance for him to win a championship. If that is something he wants to do, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of move that is made shortly after the draft. Once the trade is completed, they'll have to re-sign their core in free agency. They have bird rights on 3 players, which makes this move a lot easier. Those players are Chris Paul, Clint Capella, and Trevor Ariza. Because Chris Paul is the president of the Players Association, he was part of the process in writing the new CBA. The new CBA allows players to sign a 5-year max deal up to the age of 38 instead of 36. This allows Chris Paul to sign a 5-year max deal with the Rockets because Chris Paul would be 33 when signing the contract. However, I expect him to sign for less than the max to facilitate for more mid-level exception room. Next, they'll want to re-sign Clint Capella. Because he's a restricted free agent, they'll likely allow other teams to send him max offers, and then they'll match whatever offer sheet he accepts. Or if they can convince him, they could ask him to decline any offers and give him a 5-year max offer after they re-sign Chris Paul. The Rockets would then have their big 4 of Chris Paul, James Harden, LeBron James, and Clint Capella. Next, they'll be able to offer Trevor Ariza a sizable extension, which would likely be around 3 years and $30 million, which is a bargain for an elite 3-and-D role player these days. At this point, the Rockets roster includes Chris Paul, James Harden, LeBron James, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, and Nene. Then to fill out the rest of their roster, they can use their mid-level exception of around $5 million on another role player, and the rest on minimum deals. We then move on to the less likely scenario where LeBron signs with the Rockets in free agency instead of being traded. Despite this being less likely, it's still a possibility if LeBron does not have a clear decision on what team he'd like to sign for. However, if free agency were to open and LeBron hasn't made up his mind, I can see him joining another team, because it would be extremely difficult for the Rockets to add him during free agency because of how stuck they are in terms of cap space. The Rockets would have to find multiple trade partners to take in salaries. This is a daunting task because it involves a team taking on Ryan Anderson's lucrative contract. Ryan Anderson is owed $42 million over the next 2 seasons. For a team to take on his contract, the Rockets would have to add in draft assets to entice a team to take him. Because of Chris Paul's $39 million cap hold, the Rockets would have to find trade partners for pretty much the rest of their roster in order to add LeBron and keep Chris Paul. Unless both LeBron and Chris Paul sign early in free agency for slightly less money, they would end up losing Clint Capella because he has a $6 million cap hold. The overall issue with LeBron straight up signing with the Rockets in free agency is it cuts down a large amount of pieces already on the roster. If LeBron got traded to the Rockets, it would allow them to keep valuable players such as Capella and Tucker on their roster. Even though LeBron signing with the Rockets in free agency instead of being traded is a less popular option, it could still happen if the Rockets are the team he decides on, which is why the Rockets pitch to LeBron should start immediately after the finals and not on July 1st. As I said previously on what it would take for the Lakers to add LeBron, they need to be able to bring in Paul George as well. While they have the most flexibility out of all 4 of these teams, their odds of adding LeBron are not in their hands. They will just have to hope for the Thunder or the Cavs to play poorly in the playoffs to add to their chances of signing Paul George and LeBron James. As it stands, the Lakers have the cap space to sign both Paul George and LeBron James. However, that would be at the cost of renouncing their rights to Julius Randle. It looks like the Lakers want to keep hold of Randle, and he would be a big part in LeBron's decision to join in the first place. To avoid renouncing him, they can stretch Luol Deng's contract over the next 5 seasons, which would open up an extra $11 million in room, which is enough to keep Julius Randle, along with adding Paul George and LeBron James. At this point, the Lakers would have a solid core of Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Paul George, Brandon Ingram, LeBron James, Kyle Kuzma, and Julius Randle. They'll also have the room to accept Ivica Zubac's team option if they want to. They'd have 8 solid rotation pieces, along with a $9 million mid-level exception, which is enough to add a quality rotation player in free agency. With LeBron's playstyle, he'll need more shooting, so maybe that mid-level exception money could go to a 3-point specialist. The current Lakers roster has a few capable shooters, including Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, and Kyle Kuzma. With the addition of Paul George, they'd already be a very good 3-point shooting team, but they'll certainly have to add to that in order to convince LeBron that they can put together a championship caliber roster. We then have the Sixers, who could have a very realistic shot at getting LeBron, depending on how the playoffs work out. Let's say the Rockets win the NBA championship, which should eliminate them from the LeBron sweepstakes. But then the Thunder beat the Warriors and make it to the Western Conference Finals, resulting in a difficult decision for Paul George to leave OKC, where then the Cavs lose to the Rockets in the finals. With the lack of flexibility in the Cavs roster, LeBron may want to go to Philadelphia if they're able to show signs of maturity in the playoffs. With Embiid and Simmons, they are set up for championship success in the future. Playing in the East is certainly attractive for LeBron because it's much easier to get to the finals than in the West. That's why the Sixers are a really good option. They have very good flexibility and would be able to sign LeBron James to a maximum deal without any roster moves. Having said that, the 76ers roster will need some reworks in order to fit the playstyles of their 3 heavy inside scorers in Embiid, Simmons, and LeBron. Embiid can shoot decently from 3, but he's still a dominant post player. Simmons can't shoot at all, and he's also a heavily ball-dominant player, much like LeBron. We know LeBron is also a dominant driver and likes to penetrate to make open space for shooters. The Sixers did a good job last summer of adding JJ Redick, who is an elite three-point shooter. He is someone they'd probably like to re-sign, but for maybe a $9 million mid-level exception. The Sixers already have Robert Covington locked down, who is also an elite perimeter shooter and defender. They'll also need Markelle Fultz's jump shot to start functioning properly, so he's a reliable perimeter option to allow Ben Simmons and LeBron James to drive. Like the Lakers, the Sixers are perfectly set up to add LeBron James to their roster because of their cap space. They'll just have to look at the needs of LeBron and try to add more perimeter shooting so that he can fit better with Simmons. More than anyone, LeBron James' decision revolves on how the Cavaliers do in the playoffs. The Cavs will have to prove that they can compete deep in the playoffs and be prepared to add to their luxury taxed roster. As it stands right now, they have 8 players on guaranteed deals next season, with 4 guaranteed deals through the 2019-2020 season. Whether LeBron accepts his player option or opts out and signs a new deal, the Cavs will be stuck in the luxury tax next season, which makes their roster extremely inflexible. While LeBron's decision revolves a lot on how the Cavs do, they'll also need to see what they have with the Brooklyn pick. Thankfully for the Cavs, if they do well enough in the playoffs, they could use that pick in a trade as a way to add onto their roster to convince LeBron to sign a long-term extension. Or they could keep the pick and see how well that player plays. Those are really the only options for the Cavs if they want to improve their roster. Otherwise, they'll just have to hope that this season isn't the last that they have LeBron James. Whether it's playoff performances or the movement of other players, LeBron's decision will be much more clear once the finals are over. I can say that all 4 franchises are in positions where they can add or keep hold of LeBron, and he would be able to fit right into what they plan on doing. We'll just have to see how everything shapes out for each team to land LeBron James. That's all I have for this video, guys. I hope you did enjoy. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more NBA content, and leave a like if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.